I want to hear the rest, as so do others. And then I want to ask you to keep playing. Next week, keep playing. Because all it does is it tests the water. You know, in America at the moment, they're having serious reservations about all these labels. Right now, the most prestigious universities in America are questioning the value of all these labels, mainly because it's totally out of hand. The proportion of kids who are being labelled and the industry about the benefits to schools, to parents, and to drug companies, if they label some of these kids, is enormous. It's a big, big problem. It's not to say there's not some validity in it, but it's like any other thing where there's money to be made, things get twisted. And so some proportion of this has gone haywire, and they know it. They know it. And this is part of what we're trying to experiment with here. How much choice do these kids have? How much control do they have? If they show enough that you can build their self-esteem, will that change anything? So if I could give them a reason to value themselves, will that change anything? If they think I can value them, will that change anything? And the evidence seems to be it will. And there are theories why this should happen. It's not just it's a wild idea that, yeah, it'll last for 3 minutes. There are teachers who are grounded have been doing this sort of thing for years, especially in alternative settings where they've had to, and they just can't get rid of the kid. They're with the kid, and they were there for a reason. They're there because they want to work with these kids, and the kids will tell them to, go away and have relationships and all that sort of stuff, and they're used to it, and it's not a problem, and all, and they will go out at lunch and steal their lunch. They'll steal money. They'll steal things from the street. They'll come back after lunch. I've seen it. I've been there. These teachers work with this all the time, and so it's regardless of what they've been labelled. Now, this is going to be a real challenge because some people need those labels. Some parents will need them. Some kids will need them. And the drug companies will love them. I mean, it's a clientele. And that's not to say some kids don't wake up in the morning and jump off the walls, which they do. And thank God I've got none of those at home, because when you see the real ones, you wonder how you can live like that. And it's no wonder parents are looking for something. Okay, any other comments from last week?
Yeah, look, I have a real a real problem with some of the stuff you're saying in terms of bribery and responsibility. If you're trying to teach kids responsibility, to take responsibility, at the same time you're saying you've got to bribe them to take that responsibility on, by giving them money. I'm in no position to give my students money. I'll give them reward, I acknowledge them, I value them, but I'm not going to give them money.
That's fair. I'm not going to argue with you. All I'm saying is that if you have you're not going to do this in sort of as an ongoing process. The minute that kid shows that he can choose to behave, I've got something to work with. That's all. All I want is to be able to have that observation. Now, I don't care what gets him there. And I'm not suggesting everyone give money to kids. What I'm trying to say is, your job is to implement a principle. I said this before. I'll give you a principle. The principle is the child has to recognise that he has the ability to choose. Anyone in this room has to recognise they have the ability that they're choosing to lose their keys before they're going to stop losing them. Okay? You are not going to stop losing your keys until you realise it's a choice. At the moment, people will say, I don't have control over that. Now, anyone who says to me, I don't have control over losing my keys, it just happens, it's always happened, well, then you can't work with such a person. But the minute, if I gave them $100 to not lose them for 2 days and they don't, then I can say, so now we can acknowledge you're choosing to lose them, so let's think about why you would choose to lose them. And I think these kids have to think about why they choose to do what they do. Why do they choose to fight with teachers? Why? Why do they choose to burn down schools? Why do they then choose to get caught? Etc. So, there are things there that you've got to work with, but I agree it's offensive to think that your job entails you to bribe people when we're trying to aim for responsibility. But it's only a first step breakthrough for me, whatever the principle is, how you do it. If you could do it through your relationship and words, so much better, because ultimately that's where we're heading. And I'll show you today. It's like a seesaw, and the closer you are to the fulcrum, meaning least intervention, positive and negative, the better. But if the kid's experiencing only negativity, then in order to break that cycle, I'd spend the money if it's money, or do something that's going to show that I can make progress. Because if I'm spinning my wheels, the kid suffers, I suffer, the rest of the class suffers. There's got to be a breakthrough. Now, I don't know how else you're going to do it, but people are choosing to do it through money because that's one of the things I suggested only. And I'm doing it because it's a principle. The principle is, can you see, and it doesn't stop with the money, you see. Once you get it once, then you've got to say, okay, now what's going to happen when I stop the money and I start talking about your choices and I start rebuilding you and saying, look at this kid, he can choose to do the right thing if he wants to. And the next day when he chooses not to, I can say, look, today, for whatever reason you're choosing not to, let's discuss what that might be. You know, how threatening do you feel this work is? How scared are you today? And I'll show you what teachers are doing in that vein. I'm going to have to think of a way forward without the money.
I agree. I mean, I think that you've got to have the discussion, you've got to do the hard work, and you've got to show the value. But, you know, it really grates to me.
Yeah, well, you're not the first one to say it, really.
You've got to work through those kids, and that's where the teachers really struggle, finding the time to establish those relationships. Because we say, you know, you set the small goal. Yeah. Okay, look, I really, you know, we're going to really work on you concentrating for 10 minutes. You do that, and I'm going to talk to you later, and we're going to establish something. You know, I'll let you know. I'll let your parents know. I'll let you know. I'll let you feel. You know, you're going to feel good about it. But if you don't, we've got a problem.
Yeah, but if you find that isn't enough, that's the problem. Only then does it become an issue. If that works, and it should work, if you negotiate curriculum, negotiate outcome, communicate to others, all the things you're doing are established principles. If you can do that, and that's enough to get the kid to make the effort, that's fantastic. You can do it. The principle is you minimise the intervention. So what you're saying is right. You minimise it. You don't go, just because it's convenient to hand over money, you wouldn't go that far if you could do it another way. But that's up to you. Some people, for efficiency's sake, would rather give the $5 test than have to restructure curriculum. It's just depending on how you view life. But you'll have to play with all this. It's your business, not mine. My business is to say to you, the kid's got to realise he's choosing. Anyone who misbehaves got to realise they're choosing, at some subconscious level at least. And your job is to get them to see that and then to minimise your intervention to get them to behave, make the right choices basically. That's your job. And it's not an easy job. And in secondary it's much harder than primary, and that's the reality of life. And why we've set it up that way is an interesting question. Probably because it was meant to be for people who wanted to be there originally. It's like TAFE. Even in TAFE now, there are people there who do not want to be there, and the teachers in TAFE are struggling. I've been to 8 TAFEs talking about classroom management. Would you believe it? It's ridiculous. Okay, any other observations from last week before we move on? Yes?
They were sort of seasoned, and one of the things we used to do with them was at the end of a small section of work, they'd line up like primary kids and sign what they'd done and said, "You're good things," and they all loved it. Got to year 10 and said, "How come they don't want to see my work?" So it was just, even if they'd done 2 lines, you know, and they liked the idea of something really nice on the bottom.
Yeah, that communication, because they can show that to somebody else.
Yeah.
That communication to others is very strong, because if you don't feel very valuable, the first person you want to like you is your mother. Okay? So I had year 10 wait until after class and collect a letter rather than things, because 20 points let you cash in. They would cash in for a letter just saying that the kid had a reasonable day in science, which they'd take home to their parents. They wouldn't collect it during class. I'd wait till after class and people are gone. I'd simply say, "You've got your 20 points, cash in if you want." But it could have been footy cards, it could have been food, it could have been whatever, but they would select a letter, many of the Ds, to take home in the case it would make mum love them. That's what they thought. Their mum already loved them, but so it's too late. But they didn't feel it, so they needed to, and I'd already sent a letter to the parents saying put on the fridge, you know, all this sort of stuff. So this is the challenge. How do you do it is the challenge. Yes, that's right. They would come prepared to do it. Well, again, something to gain. I'm sure you can do this with adults, unfortunately.